Upstate New York, and specifically the Rochester area, has one of the largest Ukrainian populations in the country. So after some of those 40,000 people saw President Trump and Vice President Vance berate Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in front of reporters Friday, they took to the streets. On Sunday, hundreds of people gathered in the Rochester suburb of Irondequoit. Elena Deline said this show of unity was very important to local Ukrainian Americans.
It is so important that this country stands for democracy, that this country supports countries that would like to stand for their democracy and are trying to keep sovereignty, freedom, have been fighting for 3 years.
Irina Bond emigrated to the U.S. just a year ago. She said she was very upset after seeing the coverage of the White House meeting, especially because she lived in Ukraine when the Russians invaded.
I was crying whole night after news. I saw that and I just couldn't believe that people more cared about he's not wearing a suit and he is not saying thank you enough when he said thank you 1,000 times, and not about people being there under drones attack, air raids, bombing.
Last week marks 3 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. We dig back into our archive when we interviewed a boy still shaken from bombings, trying to get a new start in Lake Placid. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street Plaza, Glens Falls. And the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition, seeking volunteers aged 55 plus to support family caregivers in northern and central New York. Visit nyscrc.org/AmeriCorps.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Monday, March 3rd. First up, President Donald Trump said today that 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods will go into effect tomorrow. He said the goal is to get the two countries to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Canada is a very minor source of fentanyl. Speaking with the reporters, Trump said the tariffs will move forward as planned.
On the tariffs, is there any room left for Canada and Mexico to make a deal before midnight? And should we expect those Chinese tariffs, the extra 10%, to take effect tomorrow?
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
The administration initially planned to start the tariffs in early February, but at the last minute pushed them off by 30 days. North Country officials like Democratic Assemblyman Billy Jones say any tariff will harm the region's economy and relationship with Canada.
I know that it's going to hurt our businesses and hurt our residents. And our economy here in the North Country and throughout New York State, throughout the country, quite frankly.
Canada is planning its own retaliatory tariffs if the import taxes go into effect. The crisis engulfing New York's vast prison system appears to be deepening. According to the New York Times, a 22-year-old inmate at a prison near Utica died on Saturday after officers allegedly beat the inmate. State police and the Attorney General's office are investigating the incident, which comes 3 months after an inmate at a neighboring prison was fatally beaten by corrections officers. 6 officers in that incident have since been charged with murder. Meanwhile, today is the 15th day of statewide strikes by COs who say they face unsafe working conditions. In a news conference this morning, the state's prison commissioner said they've started sending out termination letters to COs on strike and have revoked their health insurance. New York State has spent $25 million on more than 7,000 National Guard troops who have helped staff the prisons during the strikes. Three years ago last week, Russia attacked Ukraine, and one young boy was at home in the eastern part of the country when the bombing began. He was able to flee the war and found himself at a boarding school in Lake Placid. Emily Russell brought us his story in 2023. Let's listen back.
On a cold, dark morning in February of last year, a 14-year-old boy in Kharkiv, Ukraine, got up before the sunrise.
I woke up pretty early in the morning to do my homework because I just like to do my homework in the morning.
That's Yegor. We're not using his last name to protect his family back home in Ukraine.
And I have heard strange sound which I have never heard before. There were rockets, I could hear rockets.
Russian rockets were bombing his hometown. The war in Ukraine had begun. Yegor and his family fled their home. They spent the next night at his grandmother's house where they thought they'd be safe. But Yegor remembers watching that night as fiery rockets flew over their neighborhood.
I survived this night, but I learned that houses down the street were just destroyed.
Yegor's school was also destroyed. At the time, he was prepping for a national math competition. Math is Yegor's favorite subject. But the war took that away from him, took away his safety and his childhood. So his big brother Dan got to work. He wrote to schools in the U.S. looking for a spot for Yegor.
The moment I got Daniel's letter, it certainly pulled at my heartstrings. We got to find a way to make this happen.
That's Bill Newman, head of admissions at the North Country School, a tiny junior boarding school in Lake Placid. They issued Yegor a student visa, offered him a full ride, and Yegor's friends and family raised money for his plane ticket. On Easter Sunday of last year, Newman drove 5 hours to Boston to pick Yegor up from the airport.
I remember he had his older brother's clothes on, and so we had cuffs folded up to the knee, and so it was obvious we needed to get him to a place where we can get clothing appropriate for the Adirondacks.
It took a lot just to get Yegor out of Ukraine and into school in the States. He's one of more than 1 million young Ukrainians to be displaced by the war. Even after he was settled in at the North Country School, Yegor says it took time for it to feel like a place where he could learn and grow.
In the start, it was really hard because I didn't know any English and I couldn't communicate with people. I couldn't do my homework properly because I just couldn't understand what's going on. But North Country School has offered me many opportunities.
It's a cool spring day, and Yegor is showing me around the school's barn. The North Country School is pretty progressive. Students here help raise sheep and chickens. They later harvest those animals for food. Yegor bends down and picks up a little gray cat.
And who's this in your arms?
It's Mercury, his barn cat.
Mercury?
Yeah, he's really a friendly cat. He loves people and animals.
The school's barn manager, Erica Burns, says getting students like Yegor to take care of the animals and to do barn chores, it instills a lot in them.
It teaches kids how to do hard things and how to do things with consistency and how to be responsible. And I think Yegor has also, he's come to this conclusion a lot faster than a lot of people's, love and appreciation for the barn.
Yegor loves riding horses and just spending time with the barn animals. Growing up in the second largest city in Ukraine, Yegor says there's no way he could have imagined his life today in rural upstate New York.
I have never thought that I would change water for the sheep, give them grain, or milk the goat, because I have done milking the goat and it's pretty hard.
Over the last year, Yegor has proven he can do hard things. He's learned English, taken AP calculus, gone mountain biking.
Also, I have learned how to ski. And Bill Newman was one of my teachers who have taught me this, and it was amazing.
The head of admissions took him to Whiteface, where Yegor says he skied black diamond trails. He's also had a host family take him on vacation, and he spent time with a few other Ukrainians in the Lake Placid area. As the war in Ukraine rages on, Yegor says he tries not to think about it too much. It's too hard.
I miss my family. My mother came visit me during this summer, but I have not seen my father. I have not seen my grandparents, which is really sad.
But somehow, as a 15-year-old, he's found a way to keep going. He's got a full ride to a boarding high school in New York, where he'll start this fall. He then wants to go to college in the U.S. Eventually, though, Yegor says he does want to move back home to Ukraine.
I hope that I can start anti-war organization. Also, I'm thinking to volunteer to help other global issues such as climate change.
Yegor has big, grand plans. But first, he's focused on summer. After he graduates from the North Country School, Yegor hopes to travel back home to Ukraine to visit family, the first time in more than a year. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Lake Placid.
The story first aired in 2023. Yegor is now a junior at that boarding school just north of New York City. He's president of the school's cybersecurity team and computer science club and is taking part in a mathematics program at MIT. We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Evan Veenstra of Gananoque, Ontario, and Jared Sommerfeld of Potsdam. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.